My name is Sloane Harper, and the exact second my husband realized I wasn't dead happened under a chandelier the size of a small planet at Harper Atelier's Winter Gala, when I took the mic, looked straight at him, and said, "Grant." Smile. The cameras are finally on the right liar. He went stiff. Not nervous, stiff funerals stiff. Like his body had already practiced the posture for my memorial. Because the last time we were supposed to see each other in public, I was supposed to be a closed casket, a tasteful photo, and a life insurance check. And he was supposed to be the grieving husband. Instead, I was standing 6 inches from him, in a silver dress that fit like a blade, holding a remote clicker in one hand and a sealed evidence envelope in the other, while every board member, every donor, every journalist in Manhattan stared at his face and watched it try to remember how to lie. Behind him, the giant screen flashed a still frame from a traffic cam. My car nudged, my tires losing control, and Grant's black SUV lingering in the frame like a shadow that didn't belong. The room wasn't loud. It was worse. It was silent, the kind of silence you only get when rich people realize they might be sitting next to a crime. Grant's mistress, Delilah Wynne, stood 2 steps behind him in red satin, mouth half open like she'd forgotten she had teeth. And when I clicked again, the next slide appeared. A life insurance policy change request, time-stamped, submitted from Grant's company laptop, 2 days before my accident. Grant leaned toward me, voice low and shaking with rage. He couldn't show the room. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." I smiled small, controlled, familiar. "Oh, I do," I whispered back. "I died doing it wrong. This time, I'm doing it right." And then, I turned to the crowd and said the sentence that made Delilah's knees visibly wobble. "Detective Ruiz, would you like to tell them why you're here?" A man in a dark suit stepped forward from the back row. Quiet, patient, the way predators are patient. He flashed a badge, and Grant Harper, my husband, my would-be widower, finally understood something simple and horrifying. I didn't come back for closure. I came back for consequences. Indemis du friends of Livin, and Demis de Vrie. 3 months earlier, I was dead. That's the weird part about saying it like that, so clean, so casual, because death wasn't clean. Death was glass in my hair, and the taste of blood like pennies. Death was the smell of hot rubber and gasoline. Death was my hand slipping on the steering wheel while the world tipped. And my brain, in its last lucid second, thinking, Grant is going to cry so well. It happened on a rainy Thursday night in late October. One of those New York nights where headlights smear across wet asphalt and the city feels like it's sweating. I'd left the office late because I'd been fighting with production about a fabric shipment stuck at the port of Newark. Fighting is a glamorous word for what I actually did. I begged. I negotiated. I offered favors. I promised miracles. That's what being the CEO of a high-end women's fashion company looks like from the inside. People imagine runway lights and champagne. They don't imagine the spreadsheets, the angry vendors, the 3-hour phone calls that end with you swallowing your pride and saying, "Fine, I'll eat the cost." I was tired that night. The bone-deep kind of tired that makes you feel like gravity has personal beef with you. Grant texted me while I was in the elevator. "Grant, you coming home? Leaving now? Grant, drive safe. Love you." I stared at the message long enough to feel my stomach do that little twist it had started doing lately. Because "love you" from Grant had begun to sound like a line, he said. Because it fit the scene, not because he felt it. And that's what I didn't understand until it was too late. Grant wasn't a husband. Grant was an actor, and my life was the stage that made him look like a man worth applauding. When I pulled onto the FDR, the rain got heavier. Wipers slammed back and forth like they were angry. My phone buzzed again. Delilah this time. Delilah Wynne, head of PR for Harper Atelier. Beautiful, charming, always dressed like she was about to be photographed by someone important. Delilah, who laughed too hard at Grant's jokes. Delilah, who called me boss, in a tone that felt like sugar over poison. "Quick question. Did you sign off on the Gala donor list? Tomorrow. I'm driving. Sorry. Safe drive." A heart. She used hearts the way some people use knives. Small, pretty, and meant to go under the ribs. I didn't answer. I kept driving, and then, right before the 96th Street exit, right where the road curves just enough to make you trust your tires, a black SUV slid into my blind spot. It wasn't aggressive at first, just there, keeping pace, matching my speed like it knew me. My brain registered it and moved on, because New York is full of cars, and I had a million things in my head. Then the SUV crept closer. I remember the moment my hands tightened, knuckles whitening, because something primal in me finally whispered, "This isn't traffic, this is intent." The SUV bumped me, not hard enough for a dramatic crash, hard enough for plausible deniability, hard enough to make my rear tire kiss the slick edge of the lane. And the second my tire hit that line, the world went wrong. My car fishtailed. I fought at instinct, training, terror hands moving, foot easing off the gas, eyes wide. The SUV bumped me again, this time deliberate. My car spun, and the guardrail slammed into the side of me like a fist. Metal screamed, glass exploded. My body jerked forward, seatbelt biting into my chest. I saw headlights. I saw the river, dark and cold and waiting. I heard myself make a sound that didn't feel like a human sound. And then, in the sick, slow motion of trauma, I saw the SUV pull slightly ahead, and I caught the license plate in the spray of rain, because my brain, my stubborn, controlling, survival brain decided I deserved proof. It was Grant's SUV, the one he claimed he never drove in the rain because it ruined the leather, the one he'd insisted was too recognizable to take into the city, the one he'd parked in the garage like a trophy. Grant's SUV was right there, and then it disappeared into the night. My car slid, hit again, and then the world flipped. Water, cold, pressure, my lungs screaming, my fingers clawing at the belt, my phone somewhere in the dark, buzzing, 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 and then a thought, calm as a final breath. He's going to collect my life, like it's a payout. Then nothing. In fine, depositive very faux. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the sterile hospital smell I expected. The smell of my own perfume, amber and jasmine. The one I wore when I had meetings I needed to win. My eyes snapped open. Ceiling. My bedroom. My Manhattan townhouse that I'd bought before Grant and I ever got married. I sat bolt upright so fast, my neck protested. The room spun. My heart hammered like it wanted to escape. I looked down at my hands. No blood, no shards, no bandage, just my hands manicured. Familiar, shaking like a warning. I threw the covers off and stumbled to the nightstand where my phone sat charging. The lock screen glowed. August 3. I stared until my eyes burned. August 3. That was impossible. October was when I died. I knew the date like, a scar. My breathing turned shallow. I swiped the screen, hands trembling, and opened my calendar. Harper Atelier Board Review, Org 4. Delilah PR Strategy Meeting, Org 5. Grandparents Dinner, Org 6. Harper Atelier 4 Campaign Shoot, Org 10. Winter Gala Planning Kickoff, Org 12. My vision tunneled. The gala, the one where I just stood under a chandelier and destroyed them. Except, that hadn't happened yet. I stumbled to the mirror. The woman staring back at me was me 35. Sharp cheekbones, exhausted eyes I pretended were intense. Hair still damp like I'd showered late. No breeze, no bruised ribs, no drowning. I pressed my fingers to my throat, like I could find the line where death had been. Nothing. Behind me, the bedroom door opened. Grant walked in, barefoot, calm, wearing the stupid soft grey t-shirt I'd bought him because it looked good against his skin. He looked at me like everything was normal. "Morning," he said, voice warm. "You okay? You were tossing all night." I stared at him. My husband, my killer. He smiled, slow and affectionate, and stepped closer, like he was about to kiss my forehead. My body flinched before my mind could perform politeness. Grant paused. "What's wrong?" he asked, brow creasing in practiced concern. I swallowed hard. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab his throat. I wanted to run. Instead, I did what I'd done in my first life, what had kept me alive socially, professionally, quietly for years. I smiled. Small. Controlled. "I had a nightmare," I said. Grant softened instantly, relief flickering behind his eyes so fast most people would miss it. "Oh, babe," he murmured, and reached for my arm. I let him touch me. I let him play husband, because the truth hit me with brutal clarity. If I was back, if I had 3 months, Then this wasn't a miracle. This was a trial, and I was about to study like my life depended on it. Honey Zoe, the first thing I did after Grant left for his morning workout was lock myself in my office and start building a file. Not a dramatic revenge file, a boring one, a lethal one. I titled the folder on my laptop, Second Life, Receipts. Then I opened a fresh document and wrote, 1. Confirm timeline. 2. Confirm policy. 3. Confirme accomplice. 4. Protect assets. 5. Set trap. 6. Make them choose the crime again. On record. 7. Make justice impossible to avoid. Because here's what I learned the hard way. People like Grant don't stop. They escalate. They only stop when stopping is no longer profitable. I started with the life insurance policy. In my first life, I barely looked at it. Grant handled the boring stuff. And I let him because I was always drowning in deadlines. And I wanted to believe that letting your husband manage paperwork was the same thing as trust. I logged into our shared financial portal. My fingers moved like I was disarming a bomb. There it was. A policy worth $8 million. Owner, Grant Harper. Beneficiary, Grant Harper. Secondary beneficiary, none. My stomach went cold. Of course he'd positioned himself as the only person who benefited from my death. And then I saw a note under the policy. Requested update pending. Requires insured's electronic signature. My breath caught. A pending update? In August? That meant the groundwork had already started. I clicked. The requested change. Increasing coverage from $5 million to $8 million. Reason. Business continuity. Proposed effective date. October 15, 2 days before my accident. I sat back in my chair. The room suddenly too quiet. So in my first life, I hadn't just died. I had died on schedule. I saved screenshots. I printed PDFs. I emailed copies to a new secure email address I created on the spot. Sloane. Harper. Secure. At. Something bland. I also did something I didn't do in my first life. I called a lawyer before I called anyone else. Her name was Marisol Chen, and she specialized in corporate governance and messy marriages with money. When she answered, her voice was calm and sharp, the kind of voice that didn't waste time comforting you. Chen Law. My name is Sloane Harper, I said. I need a meeting today. It's urgent. A pause. Then, Harper Atelier? Yes. Another pause. The kind where smart people decide how careful to be. What kind of urgent? I looked at the closed office door. I listened for footsteps. Then I said, very softly, I believe my husband is planning to profit from my death. Silence. Then her voice dropped. All business. Where are you right now? In my home. Are you safe? I'm alive, I said. And the word tasted strange. Marisol exhaled once, like she was already building my case in her head. 2 hours, she said. Come alone. Bring any documentation you have. And Sloane, do not tip him off. I won't, I promised. After I hung up, my hands started shaking so badly, I had to put them flat on the desk, because the adrenaline finally had somewhere to go. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being dramatic. I was back in time, staring at my own future like it was a trap I'd already fallen into once. And I had one job. Don't die politely again. Into the Faust as a lecking. That weekend, Grant's parents hosted their annual end-of-summer dinner in Greenwich. One of those gatherings where rich families pretend they're warm, while measuring your worth like a stock. It mattered in my first life, because I wanted them to like me. It mattered in my second life, because I needed to see who was on Grant's side when the mask slipped. The house was enormous, white, smug. The kind of house that looks like it has never heard the word no. His mother, Cynthia, greeted me at the door with a cheek kiss that never touched skin. Sloane, she said, eyes scanning my dress. You look busy. Busy, in Cynthia's language, meant you look like a woman who works too hard to belong here. Grant's father, Richard, shook my hand like we were closing a deal. How's the company? He asked. Not, how are you? The company. My company. The one Grant had slowly tried to turn into our company with his helpful suggestions and his charming presence at events. It's strong, I said. Grant slid an arm around my waist, possessive in a way that would have made my first life heart flutter. Now it made my skin crawl. Delilah was there. Of course she was. She stood near the bar with a glass of white wine, laughing at something Cynthia said, like she was already family. When she saw me, her smile widened, too bright, too eager. "Sloane," she chirped. "I didn't know you were coming." I stared at her. In my first life, I told myself Delilah was just ambitious, just young, just admiring. In my second life, I could see the hunger in her eyes, with terrifying clarity. "I'm married to him," I said lightly. "Where else would I be?" Grant's fingers tightened slightly at my waist, a warning. Delilah laughed like it was a joke, but her eyes flicked to Grant's face. Checking. Always checking. At dinner, Cynthia did what she always did. Performed. She talked about charity, about legacy, about women supporting women, while her entire gaze pinned me like an insect. "You've been travelling so much," she said. "Must be hard to balance. Everything." I sipped my water. "It is." Grant squeezed my knee under the table, like he was reminding me to behave. Cynthia smiled. "Grant tells us you're finally considering expanding the life insurance policy. Smart. A woman in your position. So much could happen." My fork paused midair. There it was, out loud, at a family dinner. The first life version of me would have laughed politely and changed the subject. The second life version of me looked directly at Cynthia and said, "Funny you mention that. I'm actually reviewing all our coverage personally." Grant's hand froze on my knee. Cynthia blinked. "Oh?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "I realized I've been delegating too much." Grant's father cleared his throat. Delilah's wineglass tilted slightly. A tremor. Grant leaned toward me, voice low, teeth smiling for the room. "Babe," he whispered. "Don't start." I leaned toward him too, just as polite. "Oh, I'm not starting," I whispered back. "I'm finishing being naive." His eyes flashed, and for 1 second, I saw it, pure irritation, like I was a machine that had begun malfunctioning. Then he smoothed it out and kissed my temple. Cynthia launched into a story about a friend's boating accident, and the table laughed at the right places. But I wasn't laughing. I was counting, because dinner wasn't about food. It was about information, and Cynthia had just proven something crucial. Grant didn't plan my death alone. His family knew the script. They just didn't expect me to revise it. Es was no en Assiskolst. Es was no en Assiskolde. On Monday, I met Marisol. Her office was glass and calm and expensive in the quiet way. No flashy art. No unnecessary warmth. She listened while I laid out what I knew. The policy change. The timeline. The SUV. The accident. Waking up. I did not tell her the reincarnation part, not yet. I said, "I have reason to believe," and let her interpret reason as instinct and pattern. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "We do 3 things immediately. Okay, 1. We separate your legal exposure from his. That means corporate governance, assets, and access. 2. We change the life insurance ownership structure so he cannot profit without your explicit consent. If he fights it, that's data. 3. We set you up with a private security consultant, not because you're paranoid, because you're a target." I swallowed. "Do you think he'd really—" "Yes," she said, cutting through me cleanly. "He already is." Something in my chest tightened. Marisol slid a document across the desk. "Tell me about Harper Atelier. Who owns what, truly?" I hesitated, because I'd built the company from a small studio in Brooklyn with one seamstress, and a dream that women deserved clothing that made them feel expensive, even when life didn't. Then funding came, then investors, then growth, then Grant. Grant, who entered my life like a solution. He was charming. He spoke like he belonged in rooms I fought to enter. He told me he admired me. He said he didn't need to be the star. He just wanted to support me. I married him because I thought love and ambition could share a home. I was wrong. I told Marisol the ownership structure, and her eyes sharpened. "You have a clause," she said, "in your shareholder agreement. It's buried, but it's there. If an executive spouse is implicated in fraud or violence related to the company's valuation, shares can be frozen." My stomach flipped. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying," she replied, "if we make this a corporate risk, if we make Grant a liability to investors, then he stops being charming and starts being dangerous." I swallowed. "Then we do it fast," I said. Marisol nodded. "Good. she said. Because people like your husband don't like surprises unless they're the ones staging them. And it's 'cause I went back to the office and looked at my world differently. Harper Atelier wasn't just my dream, it was my battlefield. The office was all clean lines and soft lighting, designed to look effortless. But behind every perfect rack of samples was a war with time. Delilah floated through it like a perfume ad. She greeted me with her bright smile, her laptop hugged to her chest. "Morning, Sloane. We have a PR pitch at noon. Cancel it," I said. She blinked. "What?" "I'm taking the day to review internal controls," I said, walking past her. "Reschedule." Delilah's smile twitched. "Is everything okay?" I turned to her, and for the first time, I let my gaze go cold. "No," I said. "But it will be." I went straight to my CFO, Derek, a quiet man who'd been loyal to me since we were tiny. "Derek," I said, "I need a full audit trail on Grant's access emails, devices, any policy-related logins." Quietly, he frowned. "Why?" "Because I asked." Derek studied my face. He didn't push. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." Then I went to IT, then HR, then legal. I built walls without announcing them. Grant called me around lunch. "Hey," he said, voice casual. "Delilah said you've been weird today." "Weird?" I repeated. "Just intense," he said with a laugh. "You okay?" I looked out my office window at the city. "I'm great," I said. "I'm just taking control again." Grant chuckled, like that was adorable. But I heard the edge. "Control is why people get tired of you, Sloane," he said softly. "Don't push everyone away." In my first life, that line would have pierced me. In my second life, it sounded like a confession. Because what he meant was, stop noticing, stop asking, stop surviving. I smiled into the phone. "I'll see you tonight," I said. After I hung up, I wrote that line down in my receipt file. Not because it was illegal, because it was a window into his real motive. Grant didn't want me dead because he hated me. He wanted me dead because I was becoming inconvenient. And convenience is what men like him worship. I think in the stairs. I think in the stairs. I think Speng. 2 weeks into my second life, I did something I never did in my first. I told my younger sister, Paige, not everything, just enough. Paige was the only family I trusted. She was a public defender in Queens, the kind of woman who smelled lies like smoke. We met at a diner late at night, the kind with fluorescent lights and coffee that tastes like survival. I slid my phone across the table. On it, screenshots of the policy change request. Paige's eyes narrowed. "Grant did this? I think he's trying to," I said. "And I think Delilah's involved." Paige stared at the screen, then at me. "Are you safe?" I exhaled. "I'm trying to be." Paige reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, real. "Sloane," she said, voice low. "If you're telling me your husband is planning something, we treat this like a case. You don't confront. You don't threaten. You document. You build. You strike once." My throat tightened. "I died," I wanted to say. "I already lost once." But I just nodded. Paige leaned in. "You have to accept this," she said. "If he's capable of it, he will do it again. You can't love the version of him you invented." That sentence hit me like a slap, because it was true. I'd loved Grant like he was a man I knew, but Grant was a man I managed, and now the bill was due. Paige pulled out her notepad. "Okay," she said. "Tell me everything you remember about the accident." So I told her, the FDR, the rain, the bump, the plate, the SUV. Paige wrote it down like it was scripture. When I finished, she said, "We get the NYPD involved carefully. We get you security, and we get him to act on record." I swallowed. "How?" Paige's eyes were sharp. "We give him the same temptation," she said. "But we control the environment." And for the first time since I woke up, I felt something other than fear. I felt strategy. In even me to nofazest me. Grant's favorite holiday was Thanksgiving, not because he loved gratitude, because he loved an audience. He loved carving the turkey like it meant he provided. He loved giving a little speech about blessings, while his phone buzzed with texts from women who weren't me. In my first life, we hosted. I cooked. I cleaned. I made it beautiful. Grant smiled. His family judged. Delilah dropped by, with wine, like it was a coincidence. In my second life, I hosted again, not because I was repeating patterns, because I was setting a stage. The table was set with linen, candles, place cards. The apartment smelled like rosemary and butter, and the kind of effort women are expected to make look effortless. Cynthia arrived first, draped in pearls like armor. Richard followed, already talking about markets. Grant's brother, Ethan, brought his new girlfriend, who looked terrified. Delilah arrived last, in a cream sweater dress that hugged her like she wanted the room to notice she existed. She carried a pie. "Homemade," she said brightly. I smiled. "How sweet." Grant kissed my cheek. "This looks incredible," he murmured. I leaned into him, voice soft. "It's going to be unforgettable," I said. He laughed, unaware. Dinner began like theatre. Small talk, polite insults. Cynthia complimenting my decor while implying it was a little much. Delilah laughing at Grant's stories like she'd heard them in bed. Then Grant stood up with his wine glass. "I just want to say," he began, "I'm grateful for family." Cynthia smiled like she'd taught him the line. Grant continued, "And I'm grateful for my wife, who built something extraordinary. Harper Atelier is her dream, and I'm honored to stand beside her." The room clinked glasses. Delilah's eyes flicked to me, quick, irritated, because she wanted that toast. I stood too. "Thank you," I said smoothly. "And since we're sharing gratitude," I lifted my glass. "I'm grateful for transparency," I said. Grant's smile held, but his eyes sharpened. Cynthia blinked. I continued, still warm. "I'm grateful for honest partnerships," I said, turning slightly so my gaze included Delilah. "And I'm especially grateful for the people who don't confuse access with entitlement." Silence crept in around the edges. Grant's hand tightened around his glass. Delilah's smile stayed on, but it was brittle. Cynthia cleared her throat. "Sloane, darling." I kept smiling. "Oh, don't worry," I said. "I'm just feeling thankful for clarity this year." Then I sat back down and started serving food like nothing happened. But I watched. Grant's knee bounced under the table. Delilah's fingers kept smoothing her napkin. Cynthia's gaze kept flicking between Grant and me, like she was watching weather shift. After dessert, when everyone moved to the living room, I excused myself and walked toward my office, and I heard its soft footsteps behind me. Delilah. She slipped into the hallway like she belonged there. "Sloane," she said quietly. Sweetness strained. "Can I talk to you?" I turned, leaning against the wall like I wasn't bracing myself. "About what?" I asked. Delilah clasped her hands. "I just wanted to check in. You've been stressed lately." I smiled. "Have I?" "Yes," she said, eyes wide, earnest. "And you know, Grant worries about you." I let out a small laugh. "Does he?" I asked. Delilah's lips tightened. "He loves you." I stepped closer, just enough to make her instinctively lean back. "Delilah," I said softly, "if you ever loved a woman, you'd know that using her husband's concern as a weapon is a coward's move." Her face flushed. "Excuse me?" I tilted my head. "I'm not stupid," I said, still calm. "And you're not subtle." Delilah's chest rose and fell faster. Then she smiled, slow, ugly. "You think you're untouchable," she whispered, "because you're the CEO." I held her gaze. "No," I said. "I think you're replaceable. That's why you're desperate." Delilah's eyes narrowed, and then she said, low and vicious, "Careful. Accidents happen." There it was. Not a confession. A threat, delivered in my own hallway, on Thanksgiving, like she thought she could own the air I breathed. I smiled, because my fear had finally turned into something sharper. "Thank you," I said. Delilah blinked. "For what?" "For saying that out loud," I replied. "Happy Thanksgiving." Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, like a shadow that had just realized the light was coming. In my office, I locked the door and recorded a voice memo. Date, time, exact words, and I sent it straight to Marisol. Then I sat at my desk and shook hard, silent, because the truth was now undeniable. They were going to try again, and this time, I was going to let them. Just not the way they planned. And Geraldine du Midas Havir, over most a text past of the pair. The trap wasn't a dramatic sting with flashing lights. It was paperwork, It was logistics. It was human greed. Marisol helped me restructure the insurance policy so Grant couldn't finalize changes without an in-person notarization that required my ID and biometric confirmation. Quietly, legally, clean. Then we created something else. A decoy. A separate policy, smaller link to a business continuity rider that looked tempting and easy. Owner: Harper Atelier Trust. Beneficiary: Harper Atelier Trust. Trustee: independent third party. Conditions: void if evidence of foul play exists. Plus a clause that triggered an automatic internal review if any unusual beneficiary change was attempted. Grant wouldn't know the details. He'd just know there was new coverage. And Delilah would hear about it, because Delilah couldn't resist gossip disguised as work. We also installed discreet security in my car cameras, GPS, impact sensors. Paige arranged for a detective she trusted, Detective Mateo Ruiz, to quietly start building an intelligence file. Not an official case yet, a shadow case. The kind that becomes official when the evidence is strong enough to embarrass the right people into acting. I hated that the system worked like that, but I wasn't in the mood to be morally pure. I was in the mood to be alive. Grant started noticing. Of course. He noticed I wasn't asking him for help. He noticed I wasn't impressed by his ideas. He noticed my smile was no longer automatic. One night in early October the month, I died. Last time he poured himself bourbon and leaned against the counter, like he was about to deliver a husband speech. "You've been distant," he said. I chopped garlic, slow and steady. "Have I?" "Yes," he said, voice gentle. "And I miss you." That line used to melt me. Now it sounded like a man missing control, not connection. I set the knife down and looked at him. "What do you want, Grant?" I asked. He blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A clear one," I said. "Answer it." Grant's smile tightened. "I want my wife back," he said. I nodded slowly. "My wife," I repeated, tasting the possessive. He stepped closer. "Sloane." I lifted a hand. "No," I said softly. "You want the version of me that didn't question you." Grant's eyes flashed, then softened, then flashed again. "You're paranoid," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm awake." His jaw clenched. He leaned in and whispered, "Don't make me your enemy." I looked at him. Really looked. "Grant," I said quietly, "you already are. I'm just finally admitting it." His face went still, and in that stillness, I saw the calculation. I saw him decide something. That night, after he fell asleep, I went into his office and opened his laptop with the passcode I'd always known, because he'd never bothered changing it because he never believed I would use it against him. I searched his email for policy, for Delilah, for October, and then I found a draft email he hadn't sent yet. Subject: weekend trip idea. 2. Delilah win. Body: Hamptons next weekend. If we do it then, she'll be in the SUV. Clean, rain forecast. We'll need it to look like hydroplaning. My vision blurred. My throat tightened, but my hands were steady. I forwarded the email to my secure account. Then I took photos of the sent folder, the drafts, the metadata. Then I closed the laptop exactly the way I found it, and I went back to bed beside him, staring at the ceiling until morning, because now I knew the second crash wasn't going to be spontaneous. It was scheduled. It was planned like a campaign launch, and I was going to show up to it like a woman who came back from the dead with a calendar. Greater. The weekend Grant suggested the Hamptons trip. I said yes. Not eagerly, not suspiciously, just yes. Grant's relief was almost visible. Delilah just happened to be going too, because she needed content for a donor weekend. Cynthia called to say how nice it was. Grant was taking care of me. Everything aligned too neatly, like the universe was handing me a script I'd already read. The morning we left, I wore a beige sweater and jeans. Hair down, makeup soft. I played the role of the woman who didn't know her husband had already picked the day she would die. Grant loaded the SUV. Delilah arrived in her own car, sunglasses on, smiling. We drove out of the city. The sky was grey. Rain threatened like a promise. Grant's hand rested on my thigh while he drove, affectionate for show. I stared out the window and thought, this is where I died. But I wasn't driving this time, and that was the point. Halfway to the Hamptons, Grant's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then said casually, "Babe, can you grab that? I'm merging." I took the phone. Delilah's name flashed. "Of course," I answered, sweet as poison. Hey, Delilah. A pause. Then Delilah's voice. Too bright. Oh, hi, Sloane. Sorry. I meant to call Grant. I'm right here, I said. What's up? Another pause. Longer. Then Delilah said, Nothing. Just checking if you guys are close. Grant's eyes flicked to me. I smiled at him. We're close, I said into the phone. Why? You nervous? Delilah laughed. No, just traffic. You know. I hummed. Grant held out his hand for the phone. I didn't give it back right away. Delilah, I said lightly. Quick question. Do you believe in fate? Silence. Grant's fingers twitched. Delilah's voice went cautious. What? Fate, I repeated. The idea that what you plan comes back to you. Grant's jaw tightened. Delilah gave a small laugh. You're in a weird mood. Am I? I said. Then I handed Grant the phone and looked out the window again. My heart was pounding, but my face was calm. Because the real trap wasn't the conversation. The real trap was what I'd arranged without them knowing. 2 unmarked vehicles behind us, a traffic unit ahead, and a private security driver in a separate car, ready. Detective Ruiz wasn't officially on duty. He was just nearby, waiting for the moment the intent became action. When the rain started, Grant's posture changed. His grip on the wheel tightened. His eyes scanned mirrors. He sped up slightly, then slowed testing. We hit a stretch of highway where the road curved, the same kind of curve as the FDR. My stomach flipped with memory. Grant glanced at me, voice soft. You okay? I turned my head and looked him in the eye. I'm perfect, I said. Then Grant did it. He swerved small, controlled, nudging toward the lane line like he was accidentally losing control in the rain. But he didn't account for one thing. My SUV wasn't just insured. It was monitored. A camera caught his hands turning. A sensor logged the exact angle, and in the second he tried to recreate my death. My phone buzzed in my pocket, silent, prearranged. A message from Ruiz. Now, I leaned back and said, loudly, like a startled passenger, Grant, what are you doing? Grant flinched. Too late. A siren whooped behind us. Red and blue lights flooded the rain. Grant's face went white. He tried to correct the car's position, turning the wheel back into the lane like he'd done nothing wrong. He slowed, hazard lights blinking, playing innocent. We pulled to the shoulder. A state trooper approached, rain streaking his hat. Sir, he said, license and registration. Grant forced a laugh. Of course, officer. Did I do something wrong? The trooper looked at him with the blank expression of someone who doesn't care about charisma. We got a report of erratic driving, he said. And your vehicle triggered an automated safety alert. Grant blinked. Automated? Impact and lane deviation sensors, the trooper said. Grant's eyes cut to me, sharp. I smiled at him, small and calm. New feature, I said. Grant's jaw clenched. The trooper asked Grant to step out. Grant complied, still trying to be charming. Then another man approached plainclothes, umbrella, calm. Detective Ruiz. Grant's face shifted from confusion to panic in real time. Ruiz flashed his badge. Grant Harper, he said. We need to ask you some questions about attempted vehicular assault. Grant's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And for the first time, I watched my husband realize he was no longer directing the scene. He was in it. Delilah's car pulled up behind us, headlights glaring through rain. She stepped out, furious. What is this? She snapped, walking toward Grant. Ruiz turned his head and looked at her like he'd been expecting her. Miss Wynne, he said. Perfect timing. Delilah froze. Her eyes flicked to me sharp, hateful. You, she whispered. I got out of the SUV slowly, rain hitting my face like baptism. I walked toward her, stopping close enough to keep my voice low. You told me accidents happen, I said. Delilah's lips trembled. Grant barked. Sloane, stop. You're making this worse. I turned to him. Oh, Grant, I said softly. You're right. Then I stepped back, raised my voice slightly, and said clearly, so the trooper, the detective, and the dash cameras could catch it. Grant, I have your draft email describing how you planned to kill me in the rain. Grant's face collapsed. Delilah made a small sound, half gasp, half sob. Ruiz nodded once, like a door just opened. Thank you, he said. We'll be taking your devices. Grant lunged just a fraction toward me, eyes wild. You can't do this, he hissed. You'll ruin everything. I stared at him, rain dripping off my lashes. No, I said. You ruined everything when you decided my life was a payout. Grant's hands shook. And then, in the most delicious, sick twist of the universe, Cynthia's call came through on Grant's phone. Because, of course, she called at the worst possible moment. Grant looked at it, like it could save him. He answered with shaking fingers. Mum. Cynthia's voice was crisp, irritated. Where are you? Delilah said. Grant glanced at Ruiz. At the trooper. At me. He swallowed. Mom, he whispered. There's been an issue. Cynthia's tone sharpened. What kind of issue? Grant's eyes flicked to me with hate. Then Cynthia said, coldly, Grant, don't tell me you lost control. I smiled, because even Cynthia didn't care if I lived. She cared if he performed correctly. Ruiz stepped forward. Ma'am, he said into the phone. This is Detective Ruiz with NYPD. Your son is being detained for questioning in relation to an attempted homicide investigation. Silence. Then Cynthia's voice, thin and furious. Who is this? Ruiz repeated calmly. Grant's knees looked like they might buckle. And I realized something I didn't expect. I wasn't satisfied yet, because this wasn't the public reckoning. This was just the intercept. The real justice had to happen where they'd planned to be celebrated. So I let Ruse do his job. I gave my statement. I handed over copies of the email, the policy screenshots, the Thanksgiving threat recording. Grant and Delilah weren't arrested that day, because wealthy people don't get handcuffs quickly, unless the evidence is heavy enough to embarrass the system. But the investigation opened, officially, and that was the fuse. Is Baycom? I have an essay. 2 weeks later, Harper Atelier's Winter Gala arrived. The gala was supposed to be Grant's victory lap, because in his plan, I'd be dead by then. He'd wear black, give a speech about grief, and accept sympathy like currency. Instead, I walked into the venue alive, in silver, with a new security detail, and a new calm. I'd earned the hard way. Grant stood near the stage with Delilah, both dressed like they belonged. His face was thinner. His eyes were darker. He saw me and went still like his brain refused the input. Delilah's hand flew to her throat. I walked past them like I didn't know them, greeting donors, smiling for photos, playing CEO, because the best revenge isn't screaming, it's competence. Marisol met me near the bar. Board's ready, she murmured. So is Ruiz. I nodded once. Then I stepped onto the stage. The lights hit my face. The crowd quieted. Grant's hand lifted slightly, like he was about to stop me. He couldn't. Not here. Not with witnesses. I took the mic and smiled. Good evening, I said. Thank you for being here to celebrate Harper Atelier. Applause. I let it swell. Then I said, tonight, I want to talk about legacy. Cynthia, seated front row, leaned forward slightly. Grant relaxed just a fraction, because this sounded like the speech he wanted. I clicked the remote. The first image appeared. Harper Atelier's earliest studio photo me, in Brooklyn. Fabric everywhere, hands stained with dye. The crowd smiled. Then I clicked again. Traffic cam still. My car. Grant's SUV. The room shifted. Then I clicked again. The policy change request. Time-stamped. Then I clicked again. Grant's draft email. Not the full text, just enough. A hush fell like a curtain. Grant's face went so pale, it looked unreal. Delilah's eyes widened. I kept my voice calm. I built this company on the belief that women deserve truth. I said. In fabric. In fit. In the stories we sell the world. I clicked again. A recording Delilah's voice. In my hallway. Careful. Accidents happen. Gasps. Sharp and ugly. Then I said, very gently, and I will not allow Harper Atelier to be used as a crime scene. Grant surged forward, jaw clenched. Sloane, he hissed. Stop. I leaned toward the mic and said, clear as a bell, Grant Harper, you are no longer permitted to represent this company in any capacity. The board members behind me stood. Security stepped forward. Grant froze, eyes wild. You can't, he snapped. I'm her husband. I smiled. That's exactly why you can, I replied. Then Detective Ruiz stepped out, badge visible, calm. He addressed the room. "Grant Harper and Delilah Wynne," he said. "You are hereby placed under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud, pending further investigation and evidence review." Delilah made a sound that wasn't a word and tried to step back. Security blocked her. Grant's face twisted into rage. He looked at me like he wanted to rip me apart with his teeth. "You're a psychopath," he spat. "You're ruining lives for attention." I stepped off the stage and walked right up to him, close enough that he could smell my perfume, close enough that my voice didn't need the mic. "Grant," I said quietly, "you thought my death would make you rich, but all it did was make me honest." His eyes burned. "You don't get to win," he hissed. I smiled small, deadly. "I already did," I whispered. "I'm breathing. Delilah started sobbing, pleading. "This is a misunderstanding, Sloane, please." I turned to her. "Here's the thing about misunderstandings," I said, voice calm. "They don't come with a draft email and a rain forecast." Delilah's face collapsed. Grant tried one last move, leaning in, voice low, intimate, cruel. "You think anyone will trust you after this?" he whispered. "A wife accusing her husband. You'll look unstable." I held his gaze. Then I said the line I'd rehearsed in my bones since I woke up. "Grant, the only unstable thing in this room is the lie you've been standing on." Then I stepped back and let Ruiz take them. As they were walked out, Cynthia stood up, face rigid. She stared at me like I'd broken something she owned. "You're destroying our family," she snapped. I looked at her and felt something in me finally go quiet. "No," I said. "I'm ending a tradition." Cynthia's eyes narrowed. "You're vindictive." I nodded once. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm alive, and your son tried to make me a check." Cynthia's lips tightened. Then she did what women like her always do when they lose control. She walked away. The room buzzed. Whispers rising like smoke. Cameras flashed. People stared. And I stood there, breathing, steady, feeling something I never felt in my first life. Not just revenge, relief. Because I hadn't just survived them, I'd exposed them. And in America, exposure is its own kind of trial. If you won, the legal aftermath wasn't glamorous. It was filings, depositions, motions, quiet meetings that smelled like paper and coffee and consequence. Grant's attorneys tried to paint me as hysterical. Delilah's tried to paint her as manipulated. Cynthia tried to leverage connections. But evidence doesn't care about connections. Evidence doesn't blush. The traffic cam footage was real. The draft email was real. The policy change request was real. Delilah's threat recording was real. And the SUV telemetry, my quiet little new feature, was a nail in a coffin they didn't expect. Grant lost everything first. His board access, his reputation, his seat at any table worth sitting at. Then he lost his freedom. Delilah took a plea deal that required her to testify because she was brave enough to threaten me, but not brave enough to go down alone. When she took the stand, she didn't look like the confident woman in red satin anymore. She looked like what she'd always been, a person who thought proximity to power was the same thing as power. Grant stared at me across the courtroom once, eyes full of hate. I stared back without blinking, because hate is what men do when they can't control the narrative. And I was done being his narrative. When it was over, Marisol met me on the courthouse steps. "You did it," she said. I exhaled slowly. "I didn't," I replied. "I just stopped letting them do it to me." That night, I went home alone. Not lonely, alone like a woman who finally owned her silence. I poured myself tea. I stood by my window and watched New York move lights, taxis, life. And for the first time in months, my body didn't feel like it was waiting for impact. I thought about the version of me who drowned in the river. I thought about the version of me who trusted Grant because he smiled correctly. And I whispered, to nobody but myself, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you." Then I did something small and sacred. I deleted his number. Because revenge isn't only about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about refusing to carry them in your pocket forever. Until, here's what I learned, and it's not poetic. Love without accountability is a trap. Charm without transparency is a warning. And if someone benefits from you being quiet, they will call you crazy the moment you speak. So speak anyway. Keep receipts. Build the walls before the storm. And if life ever hands you a second chance, whether you call it reincarnation or fate, or pure stubborn luck, don't waste it trying to be nice to people who already chose to harm you. Be smart, be loud when it matters, and stay alive long enough to watch the truth win.